Right. Good afternoon to everybody. If I can just have a signal that everybody can hear me, you can put your hand up, you can send me a heart, you can unmute. Great. Thank you so much. So a warm welcome to you all. My name is Mapheleli Sibindana. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the Africa Center for Inclusive Health Management. I'm also the co-founder and director of Root-Fed Consultancy, a spiritually based counseling and coaching practice. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this much needed conversation on women as entry points into health systems that, despite socio-political developments, remain inaccessible, alienating, and constraining for service users. This relates both to current service users and those who remain excluded and denied dignity within our current health systems. This raises a critical question for inclusive health systems and the management thereof. Are we truly systems that genuinely accommodate diverse users, or systems that depend on women to compensate for their inaccessibility? When planning this webinar, it was our primary intention to facilitate the space as a conversation. We position conversation or dialogue as a humanizing tool or method within a dehumanizing reality. Within a decolonial framework, this method shifts the potential of the space from a process of extracting and sharing information to a process of establishing and restoring relations between us and you as concerned and connected beings within systemic dehumanization. More specifically, we encourage a reiterative process of meaning making by encouraging you to move from the macro framing of inclusive health systems, policies, and systems thinking to deeper interrogation and concern as to how these manifest and impact our micro experience, our day-to-day lived experience of providing healthcare and of being service users of our healthcare systems within our context. As necessary as this conversation is, we unfortunately only have 90 minutes to engage in dialogue with our panelists and those of you in attendance today. For that reason, I will briefly introduce the panel and allow for them to share more about their experience and insights in conversation with each other as we move through the various discussion points. We wanted this to flow as organically as possible, so please, we ask for your grace and your patience as we allow this conversation to unfold within the limitations of technology. We will then have some time for audience engagement, and then at the end, we have a very short exercise where we ask for your input as to how we can continue this conversation within our various positions, locations, and situations. So with that being said, I welcome Dr. Hajunwa. Choma is a senior lecturer at the Africa Center for Inclusive Health Management. Her research interests include well-being and spirituality, critical disability studies, and indigenous knowledge systems, with a special interest in indigenous maternal care. Hi, Choma. Thank you for putting your camera on. Great. Dr. Matsilo Mudzei is an author, researcher, healer, and social justice practitioner whose work explores the intersections of childbirth, spirituality, and structural violence, with particular attention to obstetric violence and the political foundations of maternity care in African contexts. Dr. Mudzei, do you mind putting your camera on for us? Is it on? I'm not able to see on the... Dr. Mudzei? Okay, we'll return to Dr. Mudzei. I'm not sure what's happening with it. Dr. Kaya Chabalala. Kaya, do you mind putting on your camera for us? Dr. Kaya Chabalala is a disability studies scholar and community engagement strategist who focuses on inclusive development in rural South Africa. Her work centers on participatory community-led approaches that integrate indigenous knowledge systems, cultural contexts, and social equity. Dr. Chabalala, thank you for joining us. Thank you. Dr. Rosemary Chibala Kalenga is a public health researcher and academic. Dr. Chibala Kalenga, do you mind putting your camera on for us? Great. Is a public health researcher and academic advocating for equitable and inclusive health systems in Africa. At Nelson Mandela University, she leads interdisciplinary research on HIV/AIDS, gender, mental health, Indigenous health systems, and health equity. Thank you, Dr. Rosemary, for joining us. And last but definitely not least, Professor Nomusa Ngoma. Prof, do you mind putting on your camera for us? Prof. Ngoma is a research scientist dedicated to advancing interdisciplinary research and community-engaged public health initiatives in South Africa and Canada at Queen's University. Her work integrates rehabilitation science, culturally responsive care, arts-based methodologies, and community partnerships to improve health outcomes among underserved and rural populations. I'll ask our panelists to leave their cameras on as we move on to the next section. And I would actually like to kick off our conversation.
I'm sorry.
Referring to
I'm sorry.
Dr. Mzee. So
Dr. Sibindlana,
yes,
can I interrupt you? Dr. Machilo just let me know that there's been power cut in her area. And so she's trying to join by phone.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to, thank you, Dr. Ojuna. I'm not going to put her on the spot, but Dr. Mzee's work critiques Western patriarchal and colonial health frameworks for their decentering of African women as central figures in community survival and leadership. So I would have liked her to initially kick off this conversation for us. But since you've delivered the news, Dr. Choma, I'm going to put you on the spot. And we spoke about this idea of women as entry points into health systems. So could you please explain to us how this shows up in the spaces you work in and what the consequence of this dynamic is?
Yes. I think for me, okay, we have 4 minutes. Let me think quickly. So what just it comes to my mind when I think about this is Mbembe, actually Mbembe, the Cameroonian theorist, political theorist who talks about the dead fields, necropolitics. So while this is not at that level, I also read about necro-social politics. But what brings to mind is within the context that I work, there's a political, there's a social, but I find that the social is very much entrenched. So the necro-social is very much entrenched. While we talk about necropolitics and it's around the dead fields, who determines who lives, who determines who will die, which is quite extreme within this case. However, the cheapening of lives and almost the reduction of lives and the burden of care speaks to that necro-social element for me. So to give an example, within the work I do within indigenous communities and women with disabilities, you have, from a personal experience, we are not separated from who we are and where we emanate from. So I remember quite candidly, me and friends going to school. When my brother is sick at home, my mom says, can one of you, talking to me or my elder sister, can one of you stay with him and not go to school today? But when I am sick, my brother goes to school. And I'm like, but why is he going to school when I'm sick? Can't he stay with me? So you find out, oh no, but he's a boy. What does he know? So that kind of thinking fits into that necro-social dynamic discussion where we don't question or we begin to resist some of this and you're pushing against what the norm is. However, this kind of social discourses starts from the home, starts from our communities and begin to permeate what we do. So now we move forward, we move into healthcare system. And what I find interesting is that even within that work, you have different levels. So you have the honor or aspiration. So sometimes when in my studies, I've heard young women say, but the burden is on me. And you are told, well, you are lucky, at least you can do it. You are not disabled. So I've worked with women with disabilities who say, we are actually seen as, listen, the less lucky ones, because we cannot carry this burden of care. So it becomes quite interesting how within my work, first is the burden ascribed to you, there's a gender dynamic. And then for women with disabilities, it's an honor for you to be able to carry this burden. And then we move that into the healthcare system. This same person who learns that as a woman, she carries the burden, goes into the healthcare system and perpetuates what she knows. And then, of course, you also have the woman with a disability who gets over this hurdle, makes something of herself, goes to access healthcare. Maybe she's about to have a child and she's told, wow, you actually thinking of having children, but you have issues. And this has come out in research that I've done, where the woman has been confronted with wanting more instead of being grateful that she actually exists. So yeah, those dynamics come up in the work that I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Choma. So not only is it discriminatory within the home, but that's then reflected within the workplace. I think it's telling that within healthcare, seen as a caring profession, rehabilitation sciences as well, it's predominant who take on that role. So it's this collusion between, our social framing and then health framing as well, where you're a carer in the home and again in the healthcare system until it comes to medicine, right? Which is so interesting. I'm going to invite Dr. Chabalala, the link around disability, and within our communities and how we live. I think the work you do within your foundation gives a nice illustration of that dynamic. I'll invite you to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Nets, and good afternoon to everyone. So for Imijelo, I'm going to specifically for this conversation focus on the mothers, particularly mothers of children with disabilities. So for Imijelo, women, particularly the mothers, grandmothers, and caregivers, they are the primary health entry points into the health and education social support systems for children with disabilities. So they are the first to identify developmental challenges when children are still young growing up. And they are the first to seek support with the health system. They are the first to navigate the education in terms of the schools for their children with disabilities. So you'll find out that this shows up when we look at grandmothers then as support systems as well within the families, that the mother would call on the grandmother to support in taking care or assisting with taking care of the child with disability. So also with women being the ones that are running the taking care of most of the community-based organizations and ECD in particular, ECDC. So you find out that for the children with disabilities, the mothers are the ones that are more concerned as into if my child will be able to be admitted at school or to attend the ECD center that's within the community. And so they because Imijelo promotes or supports the enablement of the communities to realize that they've got the gifts within them, they've got the resources to be able to do whatever that they are able to do basic within their communities. So the grandmothers, in acknowledging or realizing that they've got looking at or tapping into the indigenous knowledge systems, then they get involved, the grandmothers, in supporting with like offering storytelling, supporting in the ECD centers and indigenous games in order to assist with the inclusion of children with disabilities. So you find out that because the mothers then are the ones that navigate these complex social systems, the burden becomes a lot if they are the ones individually, like the families who carry this without the communities and the systems acknowledging that they've got to enable and make these services to be able to be accessible to mothers or women. And then this often leads to burnout and also family challenges because the mother ultimately would find it a lot to carry the burden alone, and then it comes out from how they relate within the families at home and also supporting the child that they are supposed to support.
Dr. Chabalala, I just think the last aspect I just want you to mention, which I think your foundation acknowledges, is the socioeconomic as well. So you spoke about burnout and the family impact. Can you just give us a few lines on what you've observed the socioeconomic burden to be?
Yeah, it's actually with the socioeconomic challenges. It's about the mothers. Most of the mothers, they are single parents, the parents of children with disabilities. And so you find out that they are breadwinners. So they've got to be the ones who find work in order to be able to support the children. But at the same time, they are the ones that have to be available and to be on call in terms of supporting the children. And then this becomes a challenge to them. It becomes easy when they support each other as the parents themselves, because what we do is we also encourage them to join our parent support groups where they are able to support each other in terms of addressing these challenges. We've found actually that one of the challenges relating to the socioeconomic challenges is that these mothers then they would end up going to loan sharks, and then because they've got the challenges financially at home, and then it also creates other financial problems within the family. So that's the challenge.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, when you mentioned mental health and burnout, I'm going to put Dr. Kalenga on the spot. I think your work with HIV/AIDS and mental health is really important here. And if you could just share your perspectives.
You want me to go on mental health? To go to mental health and HIV and AIDS?
No, I'm just making the links between what Dr. Chabalala is shared and your work. You can take us anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For this discussion, I thought of drawing the thoughts and bringing to bringing to the table findings and discussions of a UNICEF-supported study that we did on sexual reproductive health and the rights of adolescent girls in the Bay. So with this, the reflections on this was on women and girls as entry points into the system of care and well-being in our settings. But rather than just focusing on sexual behavior, pregnancy preventions, and service access, I want us to see toward girls within an overlapping space where health, vulnerability, care, and urgency are shaped, because they're in a bigger space than just a health facility. And why I thought of it being necessary for us to think in sort of in that line of thought. I thought of adolescent girls as people that are in a transitory kind of space. An adolescent girl or boy, they are in between adulthood and childhood. And these things are marked by physical, emotional, social change, you know? And for girls, this transition is shaped by gender norms, sexuality, family, education, economic conditions, peers, and health systems. So well-being is not just confined to clinics, but it is negotiated across homes, schools, communities, relationships, and healthcare services. And these spaces can support girls, but also expose them to stigma, exclusion, and unequal power. Now, this raises a question that what if the system were designed from girls' lived experiences rather than expecting girls to fit into the system that are not built for them? Because when we tease out what these girls were talking about when they experienced of the experiences within the healthcare facilities, it was shocking to hear the things that they had to say. For example, a girl would be going, a girl that thinks of going to a healthcare facility and thinking they're going to start family planning because they're being bothered by whatever the circumstance is, and they want to protect themselves. Going to the clinic does not guarantee that it will be assisters in whatever the endeavor is. But in there, they will face exclusions. They will be judged. They will be excluded. They will be asked, what do you want? Are you going around sleeping with other people's husbands? Now you are coming here, you're 15 and you want to, what do you want? You want to be sleeping with boys. What's your problem? However, the challenges that I found in that whole space, even with the questions, understanding myself as a mother and as a woman in that kind of space, and what we believe from a cultural setting in terms of abstinence and the pride of growing up this girl without being pregnant and so forth. But this girl wants to protect herself. She goes to the clinic and she says, whatever you're doing, you should stop the nonsense. Get out of here. 2 or 3 months later, this girl comes to the clinic and now she's pregnant. It's another problem. It has compounded. It was one thing that could have been presented, but because of the systems that sort of run around a system that will not support that kind of thinking, that a girl can actually protect herself from getting pregnant, or she can stand up and say, I don't want to have, even if in the family everybody had a child at 16, I want to stand up. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a mother at 16. Standing up, sometimes the society itself somehow cuts you from protecting yourself, and you end up thrown into the deep, because some of the girls that are pregnant get pregnant. They're not pregnant because they wanted to be pregnant. Somebody did it to them. In this setting that I'm talking about, when I was doing these workshops with these adolescent girls, we were sitting in every Saturday. I went to the locations every Saturday, and I sat in 3 different groups. And in each group, there were girls that came with their kids. And one of the most heartbreaking one was one that came with, she was 18. She was already a mother of 3 children. Yeah, she was already a mother of 3 children. And in each case, somebody denied her access to family planning. As she disclosed who the parents, who the fathers of the children are, no, she can't say. She has never said, she has never mentioned. The question is, who is it? And why is she not disclosing who the father of the children are? Is she suffering in silence because there could be gender powers or unequal powers within a setting? Therefore, she's forced in the situation where she finds herself totally vulnerable. She's got no control. She's popping out babies, you know? But she was still going to school. She's in grade 11. 3 kids. Who takes care of your children? No, my grandmother takes care of my children when I'm at school. And when you have to go to no, some days I don't go to school because I'm busy with the kids, because I have to take them to the clinic. It's an 18-year-old who is a parent of 3, has to manage school and run. It's just thinking about it, it feels impossible for me. But this child, this girl has to endure all that. So in other words, well-being is not just confined to clinics, but negotiated in different spaces. It's like we normally want to look at the clinics, at entry points, those spaces where we'll be cared for, but there are different layers around the clinic, you know, that should be very protective of these girls. It's the home, it's the schools, it's the communities, it's relationships, you know? Yeah. So should I carry on with my talk, or should another person, because I can go on and on. It's the girls. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's Christmas Day and I will still be talking about adolescent girls.
I think for just just for the interest of time, I mean, it's so interesting to see is located, and what they're bringing up. But I think what's coming out across is this idea of accessibility that is denied intergenerationally, and what impact that has on women's experiences of agency when accessing the health system, or even trying to broach, right, things that are genderized within our health system. And I think this idea of structural violence is so important when we look at our health system at the moment. And I'm not sure whether Dr. Mutsei, are you with us? Were you able to connect?
I am. Can you hear me?
Great. No technology shall prosper against us. We are happy that you're able to join us.
Okay, I'm going to ask though that as I present, if I can switch off my camera, if it's okay. You can imagine my face as I speak. I'm worried that maybe something might interfere with our connectivity. I think you said that we'll try our best within the limitations of technology. So if it's okay, I'd like to switch off my camera. And just from the to say that I approached the topic from outside of the formal healthcare system that we're talking about. I'm approaching it from, like, maybe if you like, the decolonial framework, but largely indigenous. I'm asking indigenous questions around who taught us to care in the way that we do right now. So this gives us an opportunity to frame the idea of the woman as the entry point within the socio-political context, and also to look at the hierarchy of care. And when I talk about hierarchy of care, think about in a hospital, the doctor and the nurse are carers, right? But their care is differently. It's put in a different position in the hierarchy. And think about within the education system, we have more teachers at preschool level as opposed to universities, more women teaching at preschool level as opposed to universities. So hierarchy of care is important, but I also like us to think about extractive care in the way that the system is designed in such a way that care becomes extractive. So systems may extract women's bodily autonomy, their labor, their knowledge, and labor here including emotional labor as well. Emotional labor and unpaid family care. While this system is giving insufficient attention to replenishment, then that takes us to the question, who taught us to care and how should we care? We have been taught to care in a way that allows the system to extract from us. In a way that we say, we're taught, put yourself last, even though do not say it with your mouth, but the way that we have been conditioned is that the carer who is a woman comes last. So I think this webinar gives us an opportunity to honor the contribution women make to care, but it also gives us a chance to ask the question, what happens when women become the infrastructure through which care flows without that system taking care of them? What happens? And I'm drawing from a paper that I did last week at the Society of Midwives in South Africa, where I was addressing the notion of obstetric violence as a structural and epistemic form of violence. Structural in a sense of what happens to you as a caregiver who's giving care in a violent system. What happens to your humanity as an individual? And then my other question that I asked was, is suppression of knowledge and here I'm talking about an entire body of indigenous knowledge, is it not violence? Because the suppression of knowledge is violent in my view. So just to kind of my approach, therefore, I also see women not only as providing care, but as living ecologies of care themselves. And here I'm coming from the framework that I use in my work, which is the framework of womb, birth, lineage, and land. All those 4 factors in my work, the intersectionality between womb, the womb as the first ecology, the womb not only being an expression of motherhood or reproduction, but it also the first environment where we learn about how to become as humans and how is that taken care of. Birth as a space where we are welcomed as human beings on earth. How is that happening? How are we welcomed into earth? And lineage in a sense of birth. What if we begin to envision birth not as a beginning of life, but an extension of ancestral lineage? And then land, which is where we are rooted. So basically, the reverence for all these elements has been lost. The reverence for the value that we bring as women has been lost. And that's why entry is even accessed without our consent. That's why there is also violation in the way that we are accessed. So all of that has been replaced by extraction because of the political, socio-economic context within which we work. And it has also been replaced by oppression. So I think I'd like to kind of end by saying I'm reflecting on what can we learn from the knowledge that exists outside of the formal healthcare system about women as entry to care, how they are abused, how care is extracted, how they are violated, how they are expected to work in violent institutions and become like ladies, so to speak. You know, you work in a place that's violent, but you are not expected to be dehumanized. So the systems we work dehumanize us, and the dehumanization comes with the notion of no, those lessons, the messages that we were told when we were growing up, women should do this, women should not do that, come into play. So I think I'm coming from that point of reverence for our knowledge, for our way of caring, and also not forgetting that care within indigenous communities was relational, and it was also offered within a context that is supported. A good example, which is my final point, a good example is when you are a young mother and you have a baby, you have people surrounding you. I mean, in Sotho, you have elders surrounding you, taking care of you. And that system is not functional anymore. You have a baby today, you go home tomorrow, next week you have to go back to work, because if you're not going to go to work, then you're going to lose your job. So women are not cared for, but they're also conditioned not to put their needs first. So it's more internal conditioning and external conditioning that we need to break through.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Mzee. I think this notion of the hierarchy of care and extractive care locating that within our legacy of oppression really reflects the colonial matrix of power. So I like how you bring in the indigenous, the natural, the metaphysical, the political, and the intergenerational. Whew. Prof. Ngoma, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I would love to hear your input, particularly as you work both within South Africa and the Canada as the global north, you know? Yeah, please share your experiences with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an amazing discussion so far. And, I'm reflecting on how many similarities I see between the various contexts in which people work. I think the status of women really transcends jurisdictions and contexts. As mentioned, I live and work in the global north. However, a lot of my work is actually in rural KwaZulu-Natal, in South Africa. And so where I work, I won't name the district, but it's very remote. A lot of villages and places where people live are situated quite a distance from clinics and hospitals. And so you find that women not only coordinate care, but also become the ones who coordinate transportation. Oftentimes, women have to accompany their loved ones to these appointments. And so, as already mentioned on this panel, you find that they have to spend sometimes the whole day because one, traveling to the location, two, waiting with their loved one to access care. And so, given the fact that also in this rural district, a lot of the women are the breadwinners in the family. And that part of that is because they are very poor job opportunities. So women are able somehow to find work, even when it's like piece jobs or as carers, as already mentioned. And so when they have to spend the day at the hospital or traveling to a clinic, the work doesn't get done. The income doesn't come. So this extends the socioeconomic burden on the family because, again, they rely on the woman to be the breadwinner of the family. Women also I find they carry the emotional distress, and it's already been mentioned, and they carry the trauma of, being exposed to to their loved ones' experiences, lived experiences. I just recently in February was in South Africa and in the same rural district, and I was speaking with men and women, but separately in separate groups. Women talk about the trauma that they experience caring for their loved ones with mental illness. In cases of severe mental illness, the system sort of downloads care onto women, onto the household. And guess who is carrying the burden in the household? It is the women. And so they talk about the trauma of intervening in cases, for example, when there's a psychotic break, in case where there's some kind of violence associated with the mental illness. They are at the forefront of that. They carry the burden. And so the conversation really was about mental illness and the approaches that we take in our communities and how Indigenous knowledge systems can teach us ways of coping and have been teaching us ways of coping and approaching both identifying and addressing mental illness. So as many of us know, when you're conducting research, there's that idea of anonymity. So people do not have to disclose anything that's personal when the research objective is not about that. It was very touching to me that a lot of people then started talking about their own personal experiences. I'll never forget a story that one woman shared where the family had been trying to access the healthcare system. They would bring this loved one who happened to be her cousin. They would bring him to the clinic and they would be sent back home. and sometimes they would be told, okay, give him this medication and then bring him in 3 months. So this went on back and forth for a few months. And of course, this is a grown adult. He would refuse to take his medication. And in those times when he doesn't take his medication, the illness would show itself more and more. This woman told a story of how she was home caring for an elderly father, and this cousin arrived and decapitated the father in front of this woman. And he was going through a psychotic break, and this happened. And she was talking about, to this day, this had been a couple of years since this had happened. And she said to this day, she still has nightmares about it. So women carry this trauma and all kinds. I mean, this is an extreme example, but it really speaks to the burden that women carry, caring for the community, caring for the household. Another example, just a lot of points that have been raised, I absolutely agree with, and I have experienced them as well in my setting. But one thing that Dr. Kaleng, I believe, has spoken about, and Dr. Chabalala, is that of teenage pregnancies. One of the things that, even though the topic of discussion in this last workshop that I did was not about teenage pregnancies, but it was women identifying the stress and the emotional distress that they are under. Because when I asked why, they said just the extent to which teenage pregnancy is a problem in their villages. They don't know what to do. They were talking about, as mothers, and this was a group of me, as mothers, we are really, really concerned. It's gotten to a point where we really feel we need to do something, but we don't know what to do. Right. And again, it talks about this break in the resources that we have and in the system, that to find mothers now caring, feeling like they are public health systems, but now the mothers have taken this on themselves to care about this situation and wanting to do something about it. Right. So anyways, I'm going to wrap up there, but what are the consequences? Yeah, what are the consequences of this was one other question. So when a system celebrates women as the bridge between the clinic and the community, we must ask ourselves, how is that bridge properly supported? We're talking a lot about the burden that women feel. How is this bridge that we call upon always to connect the community and the clinic or the healthcare system? How is this bridge protected? One, as recently raised, how is this bridge protected and supported? And because we know that women are disproportionately represented as community caregivers, as community health workers, and we know that the labor that they provide is extremely undervalued, underpaid. So we really have to ask ourselves, how can we as healthcare systems do better? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, I think there's to add, right? And like I said, thinking about this 90 minutes that we have is really, really, really short, for conversation. But I think for this next question I'm going to pose to the panel, I'm just going to ask everybody to be brief. And Dr. Chabalala, I'm going to put you on the spot, unfortunately. But I think as someone who sits, squarely at the intersection of community engagement and access to healthcare, I'd like to invite you to briefly describe what inclusive health management means to you, and speak to what that might look like from your respective of practice. Invite the rest of the panelists to contribute. Thank you. You are muted, Dr. Chabalala. You are muted. Don't deprive us of the gold, please.
Sorry. So I was saying, for me, and within the space, engaging inclusive health then means creating connected community-based systems that acknowledge women as key partners and key partners in care. And in that way, by so doing, that ensures that inclusion, well-being, and the support becomes a collective responsibility rather than just an individual family burden. So, which makes it easy for everyone to work each other and then ease the load from the women who are the ones who always maneuver around these complex systems. So the question that we need to ask is whether the schools in our communities, are the teachers open in terms of understanding how to work with the parents in admitting and also supporting children with disabilities within the local schools. And also, the systems, does government support those systems within the communities in terms of supporting, making sure that the support that's needed for these women in communities are easily access the support, like social services support that they need. And also looking within the families, do we understand the challenge that a parent with a disability experiences or goes through in terms of being present and available for the person, the mother, within the family? Yeah, and the communities in terms of including the children with disabilities, when we are open in terms of making the conversations a norm about all these things and not just making it a responsibility of a family or that parent or a special school, but trying as the community to be able to drive, to work together in order to create more inclusive systems and services and opportunities within our communities. Yeah, that's
Thank
my
you.
view.
Okay, can I come in?
Thank you, Doctor.
Uh,
Dr. Ohajunwa?
Sure.
Hey, please. Dr. Mutse,
Thank you.
we lost
Okay.
you.
Is it
You are muted.
okay? Is it Dr. Motse? Sheila, are you
Okay.
speaking? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in, just in case I get cut off. What does inclusive health management mean to me? Within the spaces that I work, it's within maternal health care. Can we ever talk about inclusive health management when we exclude an entire body of knowledge? So my view is inclusive health management of maternal health care has to include the knowledge and practices of Indigenous midwives. As things stand now in South Africa, the national guidelines on maternity care mention traditional birth attendants once in the whole guidelines under the heading exclusion. But even then, we still sign a pledge on respectful maternity care that we are providing culturally sensitive care while we exclude an entire body of knowledge. So my view is that there can never be inclusive health management when we...
Sorry, Prof, we're losing you there.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you just repeat that last line? We lost you there in the...
Okay, they
So we're speaking about culturally competent care.
Yeah, We can never talk about providing culturally competent or culturally sensitive
Okay,
care
I think we might have
and knowledge.
lost.
Yeah.
Are you back? Okay.
I've said it. Have you heard me? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear her. I think the struggle is with
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just ask you to put it in the chat. I'll ask you just to put it. Oh, it's a
Yeah,
struggle with me. I
Yes, we
apologize.
can hear her.
Okay.
Yes.
Apologies, Dr. Mutse. They got you. Okay, it must be my connection.
So let
Dr.
me just
Chuma, apologies, please continue.
no problem. Let me just connect to what Dr. Mutse has said, because I'm also looking at the area of maternal and child health and the wealth of knowledge that we have in our communities. Part of the work that I'm doing now. It's also an area of deep interest for me, and also looking at women with disabilities within that space, how traditional birth attendants work with women and support them. So if just an example, inclusive health management for me would be an example. One of the studies we did, and one of the traditional birth attendants said, do you know that we have such a simple problem, very simple problem? And what is this problem? They said, in this era of HIV and AIDS, must we take money that we don't have to buy gloves to deliver babies? We go to the healthcare system, we ask them for gloves, and we are told, no, you are not allowed to do it. You cannot give birth to a child. But in the night, a woman is in labor, the clinics are closed. What do? She comes to me. I'm not going to drive her away. So I end up delivering this child without gloves, because I cannot take from my meager income to go and buy gloves. And so this is a reality within our communities. And so for me, inclusive healthcare management will speak to seeing the person and the systems surrounding this person and asking, how can we make it better? How can we make it sustainable? Especially for women, because from the bottom-up approach and from the hierarchical governmental approach, the woman is caught in the middle, where you have certain expectations within the family and community, but also have hierarchical expectations. So all of that is really squeezing the woman in the middle. So what do we then do? Like colleagues have asked here, that's the question that remains. How can inclusive health management look at these systems and also address it, saying, how can we make it better? How can it be sustainable? This betterment, how can it be sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you, Choma. Any of our panelists, you're welcome to jump in at this point.
All right, can I go?
Thank you, Prof.
For me, I'm looking at the sexual reproductive health and rights of adolescent girls. I look at implications for inclusive health management as something that requires to look at how people actually live. You know, for us to be inclusive, we must be very accommodating, analyzing what's his life like here in this particular context. What is it? For example, in the sexual reproductive health and rights of adolescents, we look at mental health, we look at violence, we look at poverty, we look at education. They are all interconnected. The girls that I was talking about that have got 2 kids and they're still in high school, one can only imagine the kind of challenges that they have and what goes on in their heads, how they feel excluded, marginalized, rejected, you know, looked down upon. And with all that, then we require my thinking of inclusion and inclusive management in terms of health. I think this whole thing requires a shift towards a person-centered approach in community responsive care. And this for me will include youth-friendly confidential services, reduce stigma in care settings, integrated sexual reproductive health and rights, with mental health care and gender-based violence services, and then strong school health links. I don't even know if we have schools that link up to health care and that kind of health provisions. Because I remember there were times when health caregivers used to visit schools, you know, and attend to them there. If they required condoms or whatever test that they needed to any healthcare services that they required, they would provide. They'll go to the school. They'll go to those schools and provide those services. I don't know if it's still happening. And then there should also be youth participation in terms of governance. In that, I'm thinking we should have voices of young people speaking, you know, into the healthcare services. And it also means recognizing communities and indigenous care systems while protecting girls' rights, dignity, and autonomy. And that, for me, it takes me down to the root of who are we, where are we, what do we really want. Before this clinic was built, before we had these allopathic medicines, what did we do? How did we take care of our girls? Can we go back and listen to that voice? Can we go back and dig out that knowledge? Why is it that currently we'll have a situation where within a term, 23 girls are pregnant in one classroom? And you ask yourself, what went wrong? What went wrong? When we were going to school in our time, we had no contraceptive. We didn't have that. What happened? How did we manage to finish matric, finish university without worrying about getting pregnant? Why? Where is that knowledge? Where is there a gap between what we were with who we are today, and there is knowledge that has been lost? Where is that knowledge? My understanding of this thing, it just takes me back to who we should be or what we have lost. Go back to the roots. Indigenous care. How did we care for adolescent girls? How did we care for adolescent boys? What knowledge did we give them to protect them from this vulnerability that they seem to be experiencing? What was the world like then? And how can we mitigate that? How do we make sure that we curb the high-level pregnancies and STIs that are found in these kids, and just mental health? It's just everywhere. And you ask, what is it that we are doing wrong, and what must we do? And the answer for me is very simple. Let's be who we are. Indigenous knowledge systems. Let's go back there and let's see what we left that we didn't take along with us on this journey on earth. Let's go pick it up and start living our lives again in our own understanding, in our own indigenous way of life that accepts, that understands, that is inclusive, that accepts a human being, not just as somebody who landed here, like we have heard earlier, as a connection of somebody who has come from people that passed before us. And this is a person that will continue living for us in the future. That understanding gives us the power, it gives us the knowledge to understand that who we have now becomes our responsibility to make sure that the knowledge we impact on them will be prolonged or will be pushed into the future than when we close our eyes and pretend we cannot see. You know what I'm saying? Intellectual stupidity and intellectual ignorance ends somewhere. We see what we are seeing, we need to do something about it. And the answer is in indigenous solar systems. Let's go back there, let's pick it up, and let's start teasing out and see how we go forward. Thank you.
Sorry, Roma, I just think it just links beautifully for me to what Dr. Motse said about how did we learn to care, or who taught us to care? Back to that source. I think it links so well with it. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask for one more of our panelists, just in the interest of
Sure.
time. Prof, please go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. I fully agree with what Dr. Kalenga has just been saying. For me, inclusive health management would really facilitate the blending between Western-based medicines and our indigenous knowledge systems. As already said, we stand to lose a lot of wisdom if we separate the two. Integrating these two systems would also ensure that people do not fall through the cracks, because sometimes you'll find that people access one kind of health system, but then there's a break in between. Now, if we embrace each of these systems and integrate them properly, we would have potentially a seamless flow through the continuum of care, ensuring that everyone is included, everyone is looked after, and there isn't this sort of gap in the system that has devastating consequences sometimes. It also gives people choice, so people can show up as their true selves, right, and be able to access all that they need for their well-being. Inclusive health management would also provide, again, as mentioned, would provide sort of like wraparound care, because we know people travel long distances to go access care. Even when it's close, it's a cost. Every time you go to access the healthcare system, it's a cost. But life is not just physical health, right? We've got emotional health, mental health. We also have social needs. So wraparound care to me means that there's one-stop shop, right? So when you arrive, you get assessment for all kinds of situations, including gender-based violence, including, housing, including food security, all these other facets. If there is one point where you go and then the assessment happens there and you could be referred to different health.
There was
And
a
I think I
breakup.
got
There
cut
is
off there
breakup in the
a little bit.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I see that the network kind of dropped there. But anyways, yeah, so finally, I will just say, a healthcare system that facilitates, as mentioned, non-judgmental, non-stigmatizing care, be it for sexual reproductive health, be it for mental health, all kinds of areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to be the timekeeper. There's so much we want to go into. Unfortunately, this 90 minutes, restricts us. I'm going to shift our plan around a little bit. I see some comments are popping up on the chat, and I am going to share with you a link or a QR code to a Mentimeter. And this poll is ready to help us map the various insights and conversation points that we need to further engage with, whether that's in the classroom, the community, within research practice, the boardroom, the dinner table, or within policy critique and developments. So it's also going to be a little bit of a temperature check for us to see where everybody's at. What are the thoughts that are coming up for people? So the question we are posing is, how might we contribute towards establishing inclusive health systems that move beyond relying on women's unpaid labor as a bridge to healthcare? And I would really like to invite you to share your questions, your comments, your insights, your inputs, and I'm going to display the responses on my screen. So as people share their insights, you'll be able to see those. I'm going to ask to take 5 minutes to do that, and then we're just quickly going to look at those and respond to some if we have time, and then close our session. So I'm going to copy the link. Allow me to copy and paste. There we go. There's the link, and I'm also going to copy and paste the QR code for those who would prefer that. I'm going to share my screen and start the Mentimeter presentation. Just give me a moment, please. Can you see my screen? Can I get a yes or
Yes, 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 we can see it.
a heart, a sharp? Okay, thank you. So I just want to invite people to take 5 minutes to answer that, and then I'll bring us back. Those who had made comments in the chat, please just copy and paste your comments onto here so that we can just engage with them. Okay, can someone just type any response for me, even if it's an X, so I can just see whether it's working and the answers are popping up? There we go. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask people to take another 2 to 3 minutes. I only see one response, and I know we had 19 participants attending. So please do, it can be a question, a comment, a frustration, an observation. Please do share with us. If you have a question for any of the panelists as well, please feel free to here. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, I'm going to ask for 2 more minutes. You can finish up your point. Mm. Okay, so we have 4, 5 responses. I'm just going to read these for us. And yeah, look at what is coming up. So our first work on building a system that acknowledges the various entry points of care, including traditional modalities, and that they are all valid. I think Dr. Muzei's work around the hierarchy of extractive care, but also putting us within coloniality, makes us recognize that hierarchy puts someone at the top and excludes others from participation altogether. No human exists in isolation, but there are systems operating around us all that influence our lives. We must create spaces to seek, to ask, to motives, then act together, then isolate. I think this relates with a lot of our panelists who talk about centering the lived experience as a legitimate form of knowledge, and those who do positioning and acknowledge them as knowers, right, within the healthcare system. Ubuntu again speaks around recognizing the individual as a boys and young men, very important counterparts, should be educated from early age about shared responsibilities. African health and social systems should also play a stronger role in educating and encouraging male participation. And I think that question came up a lot when we think about the burden of care. Where are our boys and young men, and how do they continue to be socialized within the system? A very important point here, I think anybody who confronts or exposes empire and the consequences of that. Fear is another factor that drives this positioning and violence, epistemic and otherwise. Fear of consequences, history reminds us of this. Do we navigate this current oppression without cost? Critical question. And I think when we come back to the broader group, I think that's where I'd like our panelists to close off for us. Start creating other bridges. Yeah, I think I was very triggered by hearing that, reinforcement of the bridge. It's almost like we become these inanimate objects, right, that can just take continuous strain. Bridges that do not rely on individuals to shoulder the burden of care. How can we encourage and empower young girls to build confidence, overcome current challenges, and achieve their full potential in today's rapidly changing world? And the various inputs that they are exposed to. And I think Dr. Kalenga's work around agency within health systems becomes very important, because if we deny girls that within the health system, where do they develop the confidence? And the question of how we position ourselves versus are positioned within the care discourse is a challenge. So again, pushing back against coloniality. External powerful structures versus internal power dynamics. We've got a few PhD topics here, everyone. Okay, so we've satisfied that we've seen this. I'm just going to note this comment around fear and the work that our panelists are doing. Excuse me. Let me just copy this. Okay. I'm just putting that into the chat for us. All right, so we literally have 10 minutes this session. And I think for the panelists here today and the input that you've shared is really great for us. Your screen is very blurred and it's hard to read. Not sure if I'm the only one. Are you talking about
No,
the
it's
screen on
the
the main
same for
monitor or
me
what I've
as
just shared on
well.
Yeah, same here too.
The main
I
meter
thought
was
it
blurred.
was my laptop.
Yeah, it was very
Oh my
hard to
goodness.
see.
Hold on.
That,
Yeah, but we
and I
were
Okay.
think
getting
it's
it.
okay because you
What I will
read out
do,
the
Yes, you read out.
responses.
Mm,
Yeah, so that's fine.
okay, I apologize for that.
mm.
I apologize for that. So what I'm just going to do is maybe ask one or two of our panelists to respond to this comment that fear is another factor that drives this positioning and violence, epistemic and otherwise. Fear of consequences. History reminds us of this. I think with what we've been seeing in academia and those who do decolonial work that confronts empire. How do we navigate this current oppression without cost? Too. So I think I will ask Dr. Mutsei with your work, and Dr. Kalenga, if you can just maybe give us some brief words on that, and then we'll close. Did we lose Dr. Mutsei? Dr. Kalenga? Are you still with us?
I'm here. I'm here. I was thinking that Dr. Mseo was going to go before me. Is she there?
I think she might have connection issues. No, please go ahead.
Right. So the statement is that fear is another factor that drives this positioning and violence, epistemic and otherwise. Fear of consequences. History reminds us of this. And how do we navigate this current oppression without cost? This is a serious question. This question is layered with volume of things that need to be teased off. It's layered in historic understanding of where we've come from, even with the idea, our thoughts, ideas, and on indigenous knowledge systems, the violence with which it was cut from us, the brutality thereof. It's not long, I think we had a meeting with our research team on indigenous knowledge systems, where we actually found that there were still documents on the violence perpetrated on people that still use indigenous medicines. That it's the witch hunt kind of, a policy that used to drive our people far from where anybody could see them, for them to still be practicing the indigenous medicines. So I think when I look at this question, it takes me there, because it was violent and it's still violent. But then despite this fear, despite the consequences, it remains true without a question that if somebody has to take a survey to scientifically prove if our people still consult traditional healers, maybe it will be something on 80% of people first go to consult people in the community. They're accessible. They can deliver without anybody closing a door on them because the clinic has closed at 5 o'clock. They would rather go to those traditional birth attendants. They would rather go to somebody that will give them something to cure the headache. There's always been like that. So thinking that it will be without cost, or thinking that there will be consequences, brutality, people being killed, people being whatever. I'm thinking that at the point we're right now, I think our voices are being heard, because there was a time when I didn't think that we could talk indigenous knowledge systems as a topic in academia. Now we are there when we can have a session like this and bring those ideas on indigenous knowledge systems as a way forward in solving the challenges that we have in our current health systems, or the challenges that we have in our communities. That understanding one another will require us looking back and appreciating and accepting and owning that knowledge, that being me, there is nothing wrong with it. This is who I am. This is who I'm meant to be. And this is what I believe in. This is what I stand on. These are my pillars and these are my roots. There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, even if somebody has to think that whatever colonization came with the Bible, even with that knowledge and understanding, it is the same Bible that talks about Moses being told by God to pick leaves and branches, to throw into some water that was bitter, and that water then became fresh and people drank. What are we being told? There we are being told that when God created a human being, everything that a human required in terms of being alive and being sustained and holistic well-being was created alongside. If anything, that was created before a human being was created. So the idea of thinking that what was created by God is not good enough, we must go to the lab and make some concoctions there to cure a human being, that is why we have ended up with healthcare facilities that are burdened with queues and queues of people constantly, because half the time it's not cure, because they call it chronic. You must go there again and get the same pills over and over again. Nobody's getting cured. Half the diseases are not curable anymore. HIV, you can't cure it. BP, you can't cure it. Diabetes, it just keeps on adding on. However, we didn't know that. We didn't know chronic. We knew cure. We knew that if you took this herb and that herb, mix it together, drink, your headache is gone. So I'm thinking with this positioning and understanding of violence, epistemic and otherwise, I think for me, it is very clear that we need to accept and appreciate that it's all not lost. We just have to look around us and realize that it all still here. We just have to acknowledge that, yes, we were blinded. Yes, we were mentally, whatever the word is, whatever it is, our memories were erased, or knowledge was whatever erosion we want to talk about. However, it's still there. We just have to look and ask the right questions to the right people, and we still build our knowledge systems one little thing at a time. Because if there is something about us, is that we stay strong and we stay resilient. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to thank our panelists and those in attendance, and just look at some key take-home messages for us. There's a comment in the chat. Mello, I am a traditional healer, and we are an access point for many because we are in places that clinics don't reach. Real inclusion is recognition, referral pathways, and shared governance. Also looking at decentering the university as the primary location of knowledge. So I think wherever people are located, right, to start to do that work. The idea that there's always a cost. The question is, how do we protect and nurture ourselves and each other while doing this work? RK, I just see RK, the initials. I saw a hand going up. Oh, it's you, Dr. Kalenga. I'm not going to give you the thing. But I think the issue around agency, how do we integrate within coloniality? How do we reclaim agency within systems that oppress? And how do we really facilitate inclusion that is not just surface? Looking at dismantling this hierarchy of care and centering the lived experience as a legitimate way of knowing. Recognizing Indigenous knowledge systems and communities as knowers, I think also is a key message that has come through. But as with any conversation, we need time to process, to take it in and reflect further. So I'd like to encourage you to continue this conversation wherever you are located, to get in touch with our panelists and continue the conversation with them, whether you are doing this work through connecting with others, collaboration, interdisciplinary work, or through your own research, your scholarship, your practice, and your everyday life and doing. I think the power is in the collective, and coming together in spaces like this and continuing the conversation outside of the space becomes very, very important. So from myself and our panelists here today, thank you for being here. We apologize again for the short, we need to decolonize time, right? There's a modern linear notion of time, but thank you very much. And hopefully this will be the first of many conversations. Your Mentimeter responses have also helped us see how we can steer this further. So thank you, everybody, and have a blessed day further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.